Hello. Thank you for joining me for my very first YouTube video. I even have a mic. Oh my god, I'm so professional. This is my first time using it, so I apologize if the quality is a little bit average. My name is Savannah, also known as Savvy Vile. I am 21 years old and I am from Australia. But skipping past the introductions, today I wanted to talk about why creativity is the key to a slow life. Now, I have written up like a little bit of a script slash essay kind of thing about all my thoughts regarding this topic. So I thought to make sure I get all my points across, I've got my MacBook here that I'm going to read from, and then if there's any points I wish to expand on, then I will do so. Making this YouTube video really comes again from this creative journey that I am on at the moment. I've been creative literally my whole life, and so I've recently been undergoing a journey of inviting creativity into my everyday life. My whole life, I've described myself as a creative person, but the last few years, I've felt the impending doom of imposter syndrome because of my lack of engagement with this quality that has always really been the foundation of who I am as a person. The purpose of this journey is to inspire me to be more intentional and intimate with my time, as well as letting creativity to live and breathe in my everyday, rather than only existing when I choose to focus fleeting time on a project. During this journey, I've realized that creativity is really the key to living a slow life, and I want to share what my experience has been like and the importance of inviting creativity into your life more frequently. Now, creativity for me manifests in so many different areas of my life. I have been making art since I was a young child, mainly graphite pencil drawings and that sort of thing. But as I grew up, I realized that creativity, a lot of it stemmed from my fashion sense. I am an aspiring clothing brand designer, and fashion design is definitely one of my biggest passions in life. But creativity for me also exists in the books I read, it exists in how I bake and how I cook, as well as, just trying any handed hobbies like sewing or clay art, everything. I'm definitely an all rounder, but at the moment, a lot of my creativity is focused on fashion design and also doing art commissions. YouTube is also the other way that this creativity is starting to manifest. I've been watching a lot of cozy videos and commentary videos, I suppose, and spoken essays, and I'll touch on this a little bit later as we talk about creative consumption as well as creativity just existing when we create. So, while trapped in a time warp of doom scrolling, I came across a couple TikToks, the first being this video here, being media I consumed this week, and this video here, which was creative projects that I'm doing. Shout out to these two creators. These videos were absolutely beautiful and they have inspired literally everything I'm going to be talking about today. So these videos really piqued my interest as someone who has been wanting to have more meaningful media consumption as opposed to doom scrolling, and someone who does enjoy engaging in creative projects. As I liked, favorited, and scrolled on from these videos, the irony suddenly dawned on me. How could I find inspiration in these videos, feel this kernel of creative energy, and simply let it pass without ever really acting on it? Truly, it defeats the entire purpose of feeling inspired by the content that resonates with me. It was then that I decided my habits needed to change and I needed to prioritize creativity in my everyday life. So, point number one, consumption and creation. Creativity is not limited to just the physical creation of something, it is also about engaging in creative consumption. In our current day and age, we are constantly consuming media around us, and at times it can feel overwhelming and exhausting, especially when fast paced content is favored and pushed on many social media platforms. This is somewhat due to the TikTokification of social media, but that is a whole other video and a topic that many creators have touched on already. However, consumption doesn't need to feel draining and meaningless or leave a prolonged sense of guilt when we forcibly remove ourselves from our phones. I personally cannot spend too much of my time on screens or on my phone in general. Even if it is doing something meaningful and productive, I still find that I feel very exhausted afterwards. But obviously, more so when we are caught in doom scrolling and we go down the rabbit holes and we're sort of just rotting our brains away. I always feel so guilty and just gross afterwards. I wouldn't necessarily say it's because I have toxic relationships with how I view my time spent on my phone, but more so, I guess, just this meaningless consumption where you can't even recall the last 5 things that you watched or took in. That is why creative consumption, I feel, is important. I do believe that consumption is part of being creative, but it is something that requires us to be aware and thoughtful of the media that we subject ourselves to. To invite creativity into my everyday life, I've been actively making the choice to consume meaningful, thought-provoking, or soulful media as opposed to doom-scrolling content that I barely retain. Now, this isn't to say that all media has to be thought-provoking and meaningful. Of course, we are allowed to doom scroll and we are allowed to just stop existing and turn off our critical thinking brains for a little bit. It can be restful and relaxing, but obviously there is a balance in everything. And I do think as people in this day and age, we need to be a little bit more mindful of what sort of content that we're taking in and the balance of meaningless content and meaningful content. So instead, I've been enjoying niche long form content on YouTube. Here are a few of my little favorites: podcasts that discuss interests of mine, or reading anthropological articles on Substack, or my current fantasy book. I've also been engaging in a lot of litfic lately. I just read Big Swiss, and although I'm a little bit disappointed with the ending, it was such a brilliant book. So I do highly recommend it to anyone who's into the litfic, especially when our main character is an unhinged female. We always love that trope. I find that when I consume this type of media, I'm not consuming it mindlessly. I'm actually retaining and thinking about what I'm consuming, what I've learned or taken away from this media, how my own experiences may relate to the content, or simply that it's fascinated me so much that I've granted it my full attention. Consuming soulful media that means something to us cannot be consumed mindlessly. When I've been subject to this sort of creative, thoughtful content, I find myself feeling more creative and more inspired because of my own insights and my own desire to share in this creative energy. So I think it's important that we exercise creativity in our consumption of media too. I think creative consumption is a brilliant first step if you're looking to become more creative in your everyday life. If actual creation doesn't come as easily, or you find it difficult to work into your lifestyle, whatever that may be, I find that creative consumption is a good place to start. It is accessible because we are so hardwired to consume lately, and though I do encourage the idea to create more than we consume, I do think it is something that is potentially more accessible to people, or might come a little bit easier to start with. Either way, it's a great foot in the door, per se, to inviting creativity into your everyday life, and something that I think is important alongside actual creation too. So practicing creativity in our day-to-day. I think creativity can often feel like something that we have to dedicate time to practice, where we put aside all of our plans and pour this energy into a single project, which admittedly you'd often feel guilty about not doing otherwise. And I think when this is the case, for example, there's an art project you've been procrastinating, or there's something that you've seen on TikTok that you really want to do, but you can't quite get around to it, you don't feel motivated to get around to it, but in the back of your head you're thinking about this thing that you really wanted to do, but it feels more like a chore. So you're doing it out of obligation as opposed to the passion to be creative. And then I think that really again defeats the purpose. I think that obligation can sometimes kill creativity when things become more of a chore and more of a job and less out of a passion. I think creativity struggles to breathe in those instances. Creativity is something that manifests in so many different ways and is something we can apply to otherwise monotonous tasks, such as the creative consumption that we spoke about. Creativity is not only about finding new hobbies or starting an art project, it's a way we approach everything around us. Creativity is found and worshipped when we try new recipes, rearrange or redecorate our homes, take photos of something we find beautiful, dancing to our favorite songs, or journaling your thoughts for 5 minutes. The common denominator is that these seemingly casual tasks demand our attention and wreath with creative energy when we acknowledge them as such. Intention is such an important pillar of creativity. And again, looping back to that creating out of obligation versus creating out of passion, that's where I think intention is so important, to not only create something that feels fulfilling to us, but something that is also authentic and actually charged with creative energy. Some other things I've been doing to incorporate creative energy into my everyday life include keeping a commonplace notebook of my thoughts. So I use this mainly to do to-do lists and just conscious streams of thoughts. There's a few videos that I'll put up here and put in the description of commonplace notebooks. I think they're a brilliant thing, and I'm getting used to just writing, not every single day, because again I don't want it to feel like a chore, but writing when I feel like writing, typically on my days off, just to let my thoughts put themselves on the paper. And I find that things seem a lot simpler after I write them down. I'm also someone who really thrives with routines, so I typically need to write a to-do list for most of my days to make sure that I actually get tasks done, and I also feel very rewarded when I can tick off boxes too. Other things I've done is writing proper reviews of my books on Fable or Goodreads. I realized I was someone who wasn't retaining much of what I was reading, although I was enjoying it and I could tell you the gist of the plot. I found that when I finished a book, I was immediately moving on to the next. I would give it a star rating, move on, and then not think about it again. But actually, writing more in depth reviews has helped me, I think, engage with what I'm reading a little bit more and also read a little bit more mindfully. I also enjoy baking things from scratch, like sweets or pasta or bread, and I've been completing an e-magazine just using Canva with recaps of my week. I just include different photos of what I've taken through the week and what I've done, and writing I guess like a mini journal entry of what I've been up to, what media I've consumed, and so forth. It's something that probably takes me like 30 minutes on a Sunday night to recap my week, and it's such a quick task, but again, it does allow me to exercise my creative muscle. And I also realize how much I've actually done in the week, and that maybe I'm not running out of time and maybe I'm not wasting my time, but look at all these things I've actually been up to. So, this all loops back into creativity is the key to a slow life, but why is that? Of course, we understand that creativity is multifaceted and something we can tap into during our day to day, but why is it the key to a slow life? Engaging in creative tasks, whether it's creation or mindful/creative consumption, demands our full attention. It requires us to slow down and focus on the project or media in front of us almost intimately. Rather than receiving this fleeting instant gratification, we're privy to the passionate slow burn of what being creative is, having these ideas or inspirations pieced together until they collide and transform into something greater. Our attention is devoted to what lays before us, and yet it doesn't feel strenuous or exhausting, but heartfelt and honestly somewhat romantic. We're pulled out of these fast-paced environments, whether it be social media or our own racing minds, to be present within the act of creativity. As early as primary school, I can recall hearing from people older than me that time flies or the years just pass by. I know that perception of time changes as we age. However, I truly believe that time does not go fast. We are just not present enough to experience it. Being present is to slow ourselves, mentally and physically, to focus on the here and now. When we do, we notice and appreciate the little details in life, and the voice of our worries sounds a little quieter. Being present helps foster a sense of peace within the soul. And again, looping back, creativity and engaging in these creative tasks, whether it's a big project or it is baking something from scratch or dancing to your favorite song or a short journaling session, or if it's even reading an article on Substack. In these moments, we do slow down and we have to think about what we're doing and think about what we're consuming and approach it with that creative intention, because they're not tasks that we can do mindlessly, at least not totally mindlessly. So, my journey and our takeaway: inviting creativity into my day to day life has allowed me to engage with my life more presently and more intimately. Rather than feeling like my day is full of cursory moments, even small tasks suddenly feel meaningful. When I reflect on my week for my e-magazines or even feel the satisfaction of task completion during golden hour, I feel like I have moments worth recounting. Moments where I learned something or moments where I felt most aligned with myself. Being creative begs for our attention. It demands that we slow down. It requires us to be present. When we welcome this energy into our everyday life, life begins to feel more peaceful, unhurried, and cherished. As someone who has been creative my whole life, and creativity has really been the foundation of who I am as a person, this journey has really made such a big difference. And I think those of us who may not find that creativity comes so naturally, I think all that it requires is that we just have to exercise that creative muscle, doing these little acts of creativity every day, being a little bit more mindful with our consumption and engaging in things that require us to be more present and thoughtful. Really, humans are designed to create. I think we are all creative. It's just how much we exercise that. So I hope anyone who's watching this video who may wish to be a little bit more creative or invite it into their everyday can take something away from this. Or anyone who's been on a similar path, I would love to hear what your experience has been as well. I really do think creativity and being creative is such a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful art in itself. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope to make some more videos like this, so we'll see what the future of this YouTube channel holds, but I did really enjoy writing this up and having the chance to chat about this, so I have no doubt that more videos will come. Alrighty, bye!